Cool Hand. Luke is not just an ordinary film, it's a powerful story about resisting ultimate authority. This film established Paul Newman as one of Hollywood's most captivating, rebellious icons. The story of Luke Jackson is not just a lesson on the cost of pushing a person to their absolute limit. For many generations of movie lovers, Cool Hand. Luke is considered one of the most emotionally gripping and brutal films in cinematic history. However, there is something even the most devoted fans have never known. Now we will explore another side of Cool Hand Luke, a secret that has been carefully guarded for years. Direct insights from the cast and crew will help you see this story from an entirely new perspective. The hidden details and cleverly embedded symbolic messages throughout the film not only change how you perceive Luke's journey, but also give you a deeper understanding of the people who helped bring this movie to life. So what do you think about the hidden messages in Cool Hand Luke? Have you discovered any symbolic details yourself? Leave 1 if you've noticed a special message in the film, and 0 if you think there's still something else to be uncovered. Don't forget to enjoy the video and hit subscribe to support the channel. Surprising revelations from Paul Newman about his special connection to the character Luke will leave you amazed. Newman's connection to the role goes beyond just portraying rebellion. It's also a deep empathy for the struggles that Luke faces. George Kennedy underwent a major transformation for his role, which helped him win the Oscar. But that's not all. His bold decisions in developing his character added a depth to the film that had never been seen before. One of the most underexplored aspects of Cool Hand Luke are the cut scenes. These deleted scenes, had they been included, would completely change the way we understand the film. This is an untold story, and once you hear these revelations, you will never look at Luke's sunglasses or hear the sound of failure in communication the same way again. This film was not what Hollywood expected. Initially, Warner Brothers thought Cool Hand Luke would just be a simple prison drama, easily forgotten and not impactful. But director Stuart Rosenberg was determined to create something much more revolutionary. He didn't just want to tell a prison story. He wanted to deliver a lesson about power and resilience, one that completely challenged the norms of the film industry. Rosenberg and screenwriter Frank Pearson wanted to do more than just tell a prison story. They aimed for Cool Hand Luke to pose profound questions about the entire power structure of America during the peak of the Vietnam War. Initially, Jack Lemmon held the rights to the novel, but upon realizing he wasn't suited for the lead role, he sold the rights. When Paul Newman joined the project, it had a star strong enough to attract attention and break through any barriers. Newman, known for his sympathy with the counterculture movement, immediately saw the immense potential of the film in reflecting the generational divide in America. Despite the film executives' objections to the public criticism of power in the script, Rosenberg and Newman cleverly devised a strategy. They decided to make the film appear safer and more accessible on the surface, while still embedding deep messages about rebellion and power. The studio executives focused solely on the simple escape story, failed to recognize the deeper critiques hidden beneath the film's exterior. As Newman later shared the brilliance of Cool Hand, Luke lies in its ability to let the audience draw their own conclusions. Some saw the Christ-like metaphor, others associated it with the Vietnam War, and many simply viewed it as a great prison film. But what all viewers understood was the fundamental conflict between the individual and the system. The resistance to traditional Hollywood storytelling helped make Cool Hand Luke one of the most influential films of its era. Though it was just a prison drama, it carried a revolutionary message about the human spirit and the refusal to be broken by systems of control. The film shocked audiences with what seemed like a simple story, yet contained deep meanings about freedom and the relentless struggle for personal dignity. One of the key elements that created the film's authentic atmosphere was the decision to shoot in extremely harsh, real-life conditions. Unlike other prison films shot in comfortable sound stages, Cool Hand Luke embraced the raw, unforgiving environment to capture its gritty realism. Cool Hand Luke was mostly filmed outdoors under the scorching heat of Central Valley and the San Joaquin Valley. The gang violence scenes were not just acting, but were shot in temperatures exceeding 100-degree F, with the cast and crew performing real manual labor. The production team set up a temporary prison camp in Stockton, California, and aimed to make everything as uncomfortable and harsh as possible. This not only helped create an authentic setting, but also mirrored the brutal realities of the prison system that the character Luke faced. This filming process was not just a challenge for the actors, but also an essential part of conveying the film's message. George Kennedy, who won an Oscar for his role as Dragline, revealed in his memoir that the real-life filming conditions fundamentally changed the performances. "We really had to break rocks and lay asphalt under the brutal heat," he shared. "After a few days, you didn't need to pretend to be tired or sunburned. You simply were." These harsh conditions created a level of realism that couldn't be faked. The prison uniforms, made from heavy denim fabric and far from comfortable, also contributed to that authenticity. These uniforms weren't washed frequently, allowing them to accumulate dirt and odors which were kept intact throughout the filming process. Paul Newman, known for his dedication to his craft, pushed himself to physical limits during production. Specifically in the scenes where Luke is punished by digging and filling holes repeatedly, Newman performed the actual labor. The exhaustion in these scenes is visibly evident on screen, intensifying the sense of pain and fatigue of the character Luke Jackson. These physical challenges had an unexpected effect. A genuine bond formed between the actors. The actors portraying the prisoners came together just like their characters in the film, often spending time together after shooting hours. This developed into a natural form of communication, reflecting the unity they shared in the movie. Director Stuart Rosenberg recognized the importance of this camaraderie and encouraged the actors to maintain their bond, knowing it would lend authenticity to the film. He often let the cameras roll before scenes began capturing the natural interactions between the actors. These moments helped create a genuine group dynamic that viewers could feel in the scenes. Lou Antonio, who played Coco, shared, "By the end of the production, we weren't just playing a prison gang, we had become a gang in many ways. We had our own hierarchy, inside jokes, and ways of looking out for each other. These are the things you see on screen that aren't in the script." One little-known fact is that each of the lead actors developed backstories for their characters which were never directly mentioned in the film, but profoundly influenced each action and line of dialogue. Paul Newman, playing Luke Jackson, created a detailed past for his character, particularly focusing on Luke's military experience. Newman shared that Luke wasn't rebelling just for the sake of rebellion. He was a decorated war veteran, a man who had returned from war and found no place in society, a society that had no room for the person he had become due to the war. The brief mention of Luke's military past in the film was a crucial part of Newman's understanding of the character. Luke's refusal to conform wasn't just simple stubbornness. It stemmed from witnessing the absurdity of death and suffering in war. How could something like violating a parking meter be important after he's experienced war? Newman conveyed this through Luke's refined military posture, like the way he stood at attention when speaking to the captain, how he made his bed with precision, and his ability to endure physical punishment. George Kennedy underwent one of the most impressive transformations of his career for the role of Dragline. Previously known for playing tough military men and authority figures, Kennedy had to completely reimagine himself as a prison ringleader, embodying a surprising vulnerability in the process. He gained weight to portray the role and studied the behavioral patterns of convicted individuals in the American South. Most importantly, he developed a detailed backstory for Dragline's crimes and his life in prison before Luke's arrival. Kennedy shared in his autobiography that Dragline had been in this prison for 12 years. He started as a new fish and had to fight his way to the top of the inmate hierarchy. Now Dragline saw himself as a benevolent king. However, Luke was the first person who not only challenged Dragline's physical dominance, but also shattered his entire world view. This became one of the film's key highlights, where Dragline's rule was challenged not only physically, but mentally as well. Another special preparation came from Morgan Woodward, who played the silent sunglasses-wearing boss Godfrey. Woodward, who was usually talkative and friendly, developed a unique ritual before filming. He isolated himself for an hour each day, refraining from any communication with others. Throughout the production, he maintained his distance from the actors portraying prisoners, never interacting with them between takes. I wanted them to feel uncomfortable being near me, never knowing what I was thinking, Woodward explained years later. The sunglasses were not just a costume choice. They were a barrier that prevented others from understanding his thoughts, making his character a mystery, something inhuman and unpredictable. Woodward successfully conveyed the brutality and mystery of Godfrey, contributing to the psychological depth of the film. These character choices, combined with the decisions of the other actors, helped Cool Hand Luke evolve from a simple prison drama into a complex study of power resistance and human dignity. One of the most important yet often overlooked elements in Cool Hand Luke is the Christian symbolism, something that many viewers, even the most dedicated fans, missed on their first viewing. The cast and crew confirmed that these religious allusions were intentional. One of the most striking Christ-like images occurs when Luke, after eating 50 eggs, lies on the table with his arms outstretched in a pose resembling crucifixion. Stuart Rosenberg, the director of the film, had studied theology before transitioning into filmmaking and carefully crafted a parallel visual story between Luke's journey and that of Jesus Christ. These details, though not always explicit, helped create the religious depth and meaning within the film, offering a fresh perspective on Cool Hand Luke's narrative. When Luke's mother, played by Jo Van Fleet, visits him in prison, she sits on the roof of her truck like a Madonna statue while Luke stands below her. This is a clear visual reference to Michelangelo's famous statue of the Virgin Mary. The cigarette gift she gives him creates a smoke halo around Luke, offering a brief but profound visual shift. Her farewell, when she says, "You know you'll never come back from this path," acts as a prophecy of Luke's sacrifice, much like Mary's understanding of Jesus' fate. The famous car washing scene, where Luke joyfully directs water onto a beautiful woman, Joy Harmon, functions as a baptismal moment. The dreamy quality of this scene, filmed with different lighting and rhythm, compared to the rest of the film, signals that this is not just a simple scene, but a spiritual awakening for the prisoners, with Luke acting as the one baptizing them. This scene is not only symbolic, but also marks a turning point in the spiritual journey of the characters. Throughout the film, Luke is continuously punished for defying authority, much like Christ was beaten and tortured. One of the most memorable scenes occurs when Luke is caught after his first escape, beaten and broken, mirroring Christ's return after being tortured. Luke's famous line, "I'm not defeated yet," embodies the enduring spirit and resilience of Christ through pain and suffering. The most powerful religious image in the film appears in the final moments. After Luke's death, his friend Dragline describes how Luke smiled, evoking an image of transcendence and victory despite being physically defeated. Frank Pearson, the screenwriter of the film, confirmed that the Christ imagery was used to highlight how power structures respond to challenges with brutal oppression. However, it also shows how the human spirit can transcend that oppression. The bosses may kill Luke, but they cannot kill what he represents to the other prisoners. The scene of Luke eating 50 eggs is not just a challenge between prisoners, but also a final supper, a communion that binds them together and elevates Luke from a mere troublemaker to a spiritual leader. While Cool Hand Luke is a remarkable prison film and a deep character study, it also carries a clear political statement about America during the Vietnam War era. The film, released in 1967, came at a time when anti-war protests were peaking, and questions about the power and authority of institutions were central to the national conversation. Luke's backstory as a decorated war veteran who returns home only to be imprisoned for a minor offense directly reflects the treatment of veterans, especially those who had served in the Vietnam War. Like many real-life veterans, Luke's experiences in the film symbolize the neglect and mistreatment faced by soldiers returning from the war. Luke was hailed for his violent actions in the war, yet punished for much smaller infractions in civilian life. His inability to respect arbitrary authority after witnessing the chaos of war reflects the growing disillusionment of many veterans. The setting of the prison camp in the film acts as a microcosm of American society. The captains and bosses represent the government, while the prisoners represent ordinary citizens whose freedoms are increasingly restricted. Screenwriter Frank Pearson later emphasized in interviews, "We ask the question of what kind of society sends men to war and then discards them when they come home changed by that experience." In the final moments of the film, when Luke is shot off screen and Dragline reports to the other prisoners that Luke smiled, the conclusion creates an ambiguous ending, leaving many viewers uncertain. In Don Pierce's original novel, Luke's fate is handled differently with clearer details about his final moments. However, screenwriter Frank Pearson made significant changes to create a stronger cinematic ending. Director Stuart Rosenberg admitted that during production, several different approaches were discussed for the final scenes of the film. The challenge was finding the right balance between the physical reality, where power structures often crush the individual, and Luke's spiritual victory. An overly bleak ending could undermine the message of the indomitable human spirit, while an excessively optimistic conclusion wouldn't fit the harsh world the film had built. The film's realistic ending, though not entirely clear, struck this balance through suggestion rather than direct depiction. By keeping Luke's death off-screen and filtering it through Dragline's perspective, the film was able to take a more spiritual approach to Luke's final moments. The image of Luke smiling overlaying the intersection creates a moment that transforms what could have been a tragedy into a transcendent victory, a spiritual triumph. However, not everyone involved in the production agreed with this approach. Some members of the crew believed that clearly depicting Luke's death would make the criticism of institutional violence in the film more effective. However, others argued that the ambiguity of the ending actually enhanced the film's impact, as it forced the audience to actively engage with its themes rather than passively witnessing a clear conclusion. Even Warner Brothers executives had their own concerns about the film's ending, though, for different reasons. Notes from the studio during production reveal that some executives were worried that killing off the protagonist, especially with Paul Newman in the role, would alienate the audience from the film. They proposed more optimistic endings where Luke could survive or successfully escape. However, Stuart Rosenberg firmly opposed these suggestions, understanding that Luke's physical defeat was necessary to maintain the integrity of the film's themes. Ultimately, the film compromised by keeping Luke's death but presenting it indirectly, a solution that satisfied the studio's commercial concerns while preserving the core artistic and philosophical essence of the story. Frank Pearson, the film's screenwriter, later reflected on the effectiveness of the ending. By not showing Luke's actual death, we allowed the audience to participate in creating meaning. Some viewers focused on the tragedy of Luke being destroyed by the system, while others emphasized his spiritual victory. The ambiguity of the ending provided the film with lasting resonance as both interpretations were valid. This conclusion created a space for the audience to grapple with complex questions about freedom, compliance, and what true victory means when physical escape is impossible. Rather than delivering a simple message about the cruelty of the system or personal heroism, the film allows viewers to define victory and failure in their own terms. Paul Newman played many rebellious characters throughout his career, but his connection to Luke Jackson was deeper than most. In interviews following the film's release, Newman revealed that the character had a strong connection to his own personality and life philosophy. Of all the characters I've played, Luke may be the one most closely aligned with certain aspects of myself, Newman admitted. Not in the criminal aspect, but in the basic refusal to submit to arbitrary authority. I've always had trouble being told what to do without a valid reason behind it. Newman's military experience played an important role in shaping his portrayal of the character. Like Luke, Newman served in the Navy during World War II, though as a pilot, not an infantryman. He understood the psychological adjustments needed when returning from military duty to civilian life and the potential conflicts that arise when someone trained for war has to face petty civilian authorities. This not only added depth to Luke's character, but also reflected the inner struggle that many veterans face when returning to normal life. Paul Newman became one of Hollywood's greatest actors, not just due to his talent, but also because of his deep involvement in social issues. Throughout the 1960s, Newman became increasingly engaged in progressive causes, from supporting the civil rights movement to protesting the Vietnam War. What do you think about the psychological challenges that veterans face when returning to civilian life? And regarding Paul Newman with his career and social activism, do you see him as a role model for celebrities standing up for justice? Leave a comment below to share your thoughts. Hit like if you find this story interesting, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more captivating stories in the future. Luke Jackson became an ideal vehicle for Newman to express his concerns about authoritarian control and the suppression of individual freedoms without turning the film into an overt political statement. Newman's preparation for the role was incredibly thorough. He took the time to talk with Don Pierce, the author of the novel, who had actually lived in a gang similar to the one portrayed in the film. Newman not only absorbed the physical reality of labor in prison, but also delved into the psychology of inmates, understanding how they maintain a sense of self under inhumane conditions. What made Luke such an important role in Newman's career was the combination of movie star charisma and the genuine vulnerability of the character. Newman explained, "Before Luke, I was often cast as the handsome rebel who always somehow wins. Luke allowed me to show you what happens when the system is truly stronger than the individual, at least physically. But it also showed me that physical defeat doesn't necessarily mean a spiritual one." This role marked a turning point in Newman's acting style, where he began seeking out characters with moral complexity and ambiguity, moving away from the simpler heroes of his early career. After Cool Hand, Luke Newman continued to pursue roles that reflected his deep concerns about personal dignity and the struggle against systems of power. Luke was not just a role for Newman, but a vehicle for him to express his belief in personal dignity, a theme that would continue to shape both his acting career and his life outside of films. When accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award, Newman often cited Luke as an example of the resilience and determination. He admired the willingness to be knocked down repeatedly, but still rise again. This connection helps explain the uniqueness of Newman's performance as Luke. Few lines in film history have resonated so deeply in the American consciousness as the famous statement by the captain, "What we have here is a failure to communicate." This line is delivered coldly and precisely by Strother Martin, and it has transcended the film to become a cultural touchstone referenced widely more than 5 decades later. The power of the line comes from Martin's delivery. As an actor known for playing small but excessively powerful men, Martin conveyed the line with a unique rhythm emphasizing its threatening tone. His soft, almost regretful intonation sharply contrasts with the violence that follows, creating a disturbing dissonance that epitomizes the hypocrisy of the institution. Screenwriter Frank Pearson crafted this line as a distillation of how power structures justify their harshest actions. The line represents a failure of communication and accountability, as the captain blames Luke for not communicating when in reality he is demanding blind obedience. The first time this line appears is when the captain punishes Luke for his defiance, and the second time it is repeated mockingly by Luke before he is shot. This repetition changes the meaning of the line as Luke appropriates the captain's words, emphasizing the absurdity of claiming a failure to communicate, when what the authorities really demand is unquestioning compliance. An important factor influencing how Strother Martin delivers the line is his upbringing in the South. Martin admitted that his delivery of this line was heavily influenced by his upbringing and cultural background, which helped create a unique cultural tension in the character's approach and reaction. The captain's famous line, "What we have here is a failure to communicate," has become an inseparable part of American popular culture even decades later. Delivered coldly and precisely by Strother Martin, the line transcended the film and became a widely recognized cultural touchstone. Mentioned in numerous films and TV shows from The Simpsons and Family Guy to Reservoir Dogs and Rush Hour, this line reflects the power dynamic between authority and those subjected to it, becoming shorthand for any situation where true understanding is blocked by power. This line became particularly popular during the height of the Vietnam War, when both sides in the conflict ironically quoted it to describe their opponents. Strother Martin revealed that he was surprised that the line ended up defining his career despite having an extensive filmography. In a 1977 interview, he shared, "I never would have guessed that 9 words would follow me for the rest of my life, but I understand why they resonate." The line speaks to something fundamental about how power operates in any relationship where one side can impose its will on the other. The cultural penetration of this line has gone beyond serious contexts, becoming a part of everyday conversation and influencing both politics and the arts. Cool Hand. Luke has maintained its relevance across decades, not only for its entertainment value, but also for its ability to reflect societal observations and authority structures that remain pertinent in any era. The film introduced a modern anti-hero model where a character might not win in the traditional sense, but still achieves a spiritual victory much like Luke does in the film. This opened the door for morally complex characters who don't necessarily win in a clear-cut way, but retain their human essence. It was Luke's spiritual victory that changed the way filmmakers viewed protagonists in cinema. Before Cool Hand, Luke's rebellious characters typically won or were redeemed in a clear manner by the end of the film. However, Luke's physical defeat but spiritual victory created a new model for protagonists, influencing many films that followed, from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to The Shawshank Redemption. Director Martin Scorsese acknowledged the impact of Cool Hand Luke, stating that the film changed the way filmmakers approached protagonists. After Newman's performance, audiences began embracing more complex hero characters who might not win in the traditional sense, but still maintain their dignity and human essence. Cool Hand. Luke is not just an entertaining film, it is also a significant part of cinematic history. It created a shift in character development, allowing for the exploration of more complex themes of freedom, power, and obedience. This ushered in a new era in cinema during the 1970s where morally complex characters were explored rather than just predictable hero figures. The legacy of the film lives on not only in cinema, but also in how we view society and power. Cool Hand. Luke stands out not only for its content, but also for its creative visual language, proving its lasting influence on the film industry. The use of natural lighting, extreme close-ups to capture emotional states, and Conrad Hall's symbolic framing techniques set filmmaking methods that continue to be studied and applied in film schools today. The famous car wash scene with its unique lighting and angle choices created a new vocabulary for depicting the male gaze in cinema. The egg-eating scene, on the other hand, demonstrates how tension and camaraderie can be built through a restrained challenge, highlighting the solidarity among the prisoners. Cool Hand. Luke continues to resonate because its observations transcend its specific context, particularly in its examination of organizational power. As George Kennedy noted in a 2005 interview, the film isn't just about prison, it's about any situation where individuals are forced to relinquish their identity for a system. Even if viewers have never been in prison, they can still relate to this message, which explains why the film continues to impact audiences in diverse contexts. The film's subtle spiritual dimensions also contribute to its lasting impact, incorporating Christian imagery without delivering a simplistic religious message. Cool Hand. Luke invites viewers, regardless of their religious beliefs, to find meaning in Luke's journey, making the film both a character study, a social commentary, and a spiritual allegory. From a technical standpoint, the film's outstanding cast set a new standard for supporting performances. Before Cool Hand, Luke prison films often focused almost entirely on the lead character. However, Stuart Rosenberg created a more immersive world by developing distinct personalities for each prisoner, and Guard demonstrating how community dynamics can drive the plot forward. This approach influenced later films, from The Dirty Dozen to modern television series like Orange is the New Black. Stuart Rosenberg's career never reached the same heights as it did with Cool Hand Luke, but his influence extended through filmmakers inspired by his work. Directors such as Quentin Tarantino, the Coen brothers, and David Fincher have all cited this film as a key element in shaping their storytelling style, particularly in character development and visual symbolism. One of the reasons Cool Hand Luke continues to have a lasting impact is because the film refuses to offer easy solutions. Luke doesn't receive a clear resolution, and viewers are not told exactly what to think about his fate or the system that crushes him. This ambiguous ending invites viewers to revisit and reinterpret the film across generations and changing social contexts. As Paul Newman said about the film, some movies capture a specific moment in time and speak to that era, but Cool Hand Luke taps into something more universal about the human condition. One notable aspect of Cool Hand Luke is the genuine friendship that developed among the actors during filming. This bond reflects the prisoner community in the film, and it was this friendship that contributed to the authenticity of the relationships portrayed on screen. The camaraderie and bond among the actors perfectly reflected the spirit of the characters they portrayed, making Luke's story more vivid and emotional. The filming of Cool Hand Luke required the actors to endure harsh shooting conditions, which naturally fostered a brotherly bond between them. Filming in the sweltering California summer with temperatures often exceeding 100 degrees F made physical discomfort unavoidable for the cast. Despite being a superstar, Paul Newman refused special treatment and air-conditioned breaks, insisting on experiencing the same conditions as the supporting cast. Paul Newman was not just a film star, his leadership went beyond professional dedication to embody personal kindness. When a supporting actor who wished to remain anonymous in interviews was struggling with personal issues affecting his performance, Newman spent the evening helping him complete his scenes instead of complaining to the director. Newman's generosity and open-heartedness fostered an atmosphere of respect and camaraderie among the cast. George Kennedy, who won an Oscar for his role as Dragline, recalled, "Paul could have asked to be treated like a star, but instead he was the hardest worker on set." This bond was not only evident in their work, but also in the light-hearted pranks that helped relieve the tension during the tough filming process. Kennedy recalled a clever prank where some of the actors convinced a production assistant that Newman required 5 freshly ironed handkerchiefs before each scene, leading to a frantic search for an iron in the middle of the remote location. Newman was also known for using his racing skills to intimidate crew members, convincing them to accompany him to and from the film set. This relationship grew into genuine friendship, a friendship that many of the actors maintained long after the film was completed. Some of the actors even reunited in later films, specifically requesting to work together again based on their positive experience in Cool Hand Luke. The genuine camaraderie between the cast helped create a strong and memorable community on screen, and these relationships played a crucial role in the authenticity of the prison scenes. Cool Hand Luke was not just an entertaining film. It is a reflection of our deepest struggles against conformity and institutional power. The film also carries subtle spiritual dimensions, incorporating Christian imagery without delivering a simplistic religious message. Cool Hand. Luke not only explores the life of a rebellious character, but also invites viewers with different beliefs to find meaning in Luke's journey. The film's ability to harmonize character study, social commentary, and spiritual allegory has contributed to its enduring influence. From a film that merely served as entertainment, Cool Hand, Luke has become a timeless work, prompting audiences to reflect not only on freedom, power, and compliance, but also on the necessity of resisting oppressive systems. As Paul Newman reflected near the end of his life, some films capture a specific moment in time, but Cool Hand Luke delves into more universal issues regarding the human condition. The story of an individual struggling against a system that seeks to break him remains relevant to audiences of all generations. Luke's improvisation in his rebellion in the film has become a metaphor for real-life resistance, reacting to oppression not with careful strategy, but with an indomitable spirit. Cool Hand. Luke is not just the story of a prison rebellion. It is a defiance against everything imposed on the individual, affirming resilience even when physical defeat is inevitable. If you appreciate these insights into Cool Hand, Luke, try watching the film again with a fresh perspective. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our channel to keep exploring the greatest cinematic treasures. Make sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our uploads where we dive deep into the films that have made a lasting impact. Now, how do you feel about the emotional moments in Cool Hand Luke? Which scene moved you the most? Drop a comment below and let us know. If you agree with Luke's message about not communicating and never giving up on yourself, leave a 1. But if you think there are other ways to face oppression, comment 0. Enjoy this video, and don't forget to leave a sub to support us.